Last week there was a story and we talked about it, took a lot of calls and received a ton of texts on this from parents, from teachers, people, of course, who heard the story. 7,300 teachers surveyed in this province, and turns out that just over half, said they had encountered either physical violence or verbal abuse in school. And the question I guess we asked at the time was, in trying to figure this out, why is this happening and how does this behavior begin to change at all? And I have some of the texts that I'd saved, and we're going to get to our guest, Dr. Ann Emery, in just a sec, but I want to read a couple of them first. When I asked you what we do about a situation like this. And this one says, and I said, you know what, a generation ago, when your parents told you that your teacher, and I'm putting myself in this situation, your teacher was basically God. If he or she said anything, that's what went. That situation, I think, has gone 180 degrees. Because now you have parents actually, giving teachers heck for some things, and suddenly, their child is king or queen, and the teachers better respect them as opposed to the other way around, or at least that's how it seems. And this one says, being afraid of our parents, those of us generations raised by parents who treated authorities, like teachers, as gods, now we have school-age kids. That messed us up because we're the parents who are now being judged. I want to get to Dr. Emery. She's a child psychologist, member of the Order of Psychologists of Quebec. Doctor, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Let me begin by asking, you've seen the results of this survey. The situation seems to be as bad now as ever. Is there a simple solution here?
No, I don't think there's ever a simple solution. But I would say in terms of the situation being bad, it really didn't surprise me that much, those numbers. And so it's interesting to hear some of your listeners' comments. Absolutely. I think what we see is some changes in how we parent in this generation and how we teach too. I wouldn't say the changes have been a bad thing, right? That actually, it was 1997 that corporal punishment within schools was banned in Quebec. It's not that long ago. And I think this idea of fear was a huge motivator, growing up for many people who knew now they have school-age children. And now we've gone to a more relational approach. So this term violence, absolutely, but I see it more as kids developing, having trouble managing their big feelings and their big behaviors. Before, fear might have kept that in check. But now we're using techniques like shaming less, like isolation less, certainly, the strap or putting out your hand to be slapped, that's gone too. And so I think you will see that you're going to have more behavior. But sometimes I think it might even be a compliment to our teachers that our kids are feeling safe enough to show them the real them.
I can't help it as I hear you say that. It seems like you're making the argument that, with corporal punishment now been gone for almost 30 years, what we're starting to see with kids who are not afraid, at least of being punished at school, that what they're doing is positive because they're getting to express those feelings. Is that right?
Well, I'm saying that it's typical development. Kids, the animal brain is fully in place. Adolescents as well, even young adults. That prefrontal cortex, which is something that helps us to plan, to inhibit our behavior, to kind of think before you act, that's not fully developed until you're 25. So it's very natural for a kid to be screaming, sometimes be throwing, and for the younger kids, like the survey said, to have more of that physical aggression. And adults too, right? You see that some of the numbers were about parents. If you're watching the Toronto game last night, you saw Mitch Marner was given a mouthful to his teammates. We all still have trouble regulating. We're all going to make mistakes. We're always working towards better regulation. But for kids, there's a real brain structural reason that they're not going to be able to.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm saying that it's quite natural, and that you would see more of these big behaviors, difficulties regulating. Yeah.
Well, then is the idea then that if this is natural and a good thing the way you're describing it, that, we just have to live with this as teachers? There's nothing we can do?
No, absolutely not. And I totally agree with the findings that our school environments, they need better support. Our teachers need to be better supported. I think we've seen that more pay is just not enough. We need some real environmental, some structural changes in there. And if you've been into a classroom lately, it's not a place, many of them, that I would want to spend a lot of time. The bright lights overhead, it's quite noisy. There's too many kids in the classroom. Difficulties with transitions, that it could be very difficult. So I think that we need some real support in the classroom, some real changes, in how we look at education and how we have our facilities, and for the teachers to have, it's the most important job in the world. I think it's not just teaching kids to learn academically. These are our social emotional coaches. They're akin to parents. And everybody can think back to a really great teacher you had, and everybody can think back to a teacher that you couldn't wait to end the year with. But they certainly need support, and part of that is how do we handle discipline? And discipline is teaching behavior.
So I'm going to run out of time, but I'm fascinated by your take on this. If that's the case, and we have to help teachers here, let's deal with that for a second. You mentioned class size, you mentioned noisy environments. Are these changes that can be made, do you think, quickly, or is this changing a system that's going to take years before we get there?
Oh, absolutely. Decades before we get there. I think, teachers, rightly so, have been speaking up for their rights and asking for more support. And I think the easy fix, is, okay, more money, but higher salaries. It's still not enough to attract, teachers who will stay, because the working environments, the conditions in many of our public schools, certainly, they're just not helping our students be in a place to learn, and our teachers not. There's certainly classrooms that are done very well too, but I think some bigger changes always take longer.
I'd love to follow up on this. I wish we had more time, so hopefully we'll be able to. We're going to bring this topic back up, and I'd like to be able to have you on again if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Terrific.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Aaron.
you. Dr. Ann Emery, child psychologist. And I will tell you, when she said, no, this is a good thing because kids now are acting out, they're not worried about the punishment, I'm a bit taken aback. And then, she explained what she means. So yeah, we're going to come back to this.